just for you. With every word we build and grow, unlocking dreams we start to flow. A gentle voice, a guiding hand. Together we will always stand. Let's edify, let's lift and share. Encouragement fills the air. Empowered voices, bright and true, on Tea Talk Tuesday, just for you.
Hey, come on in, come on in, come on in. It's Tuesday. The time is now 8 p.m. Central on a Tuesday. So by now, you know what that means. That means that it's once again time for Tea Talk Tuesday. I'm T. Carter, the creator and founder of Tea Talk Tuesday. And whether you're here in person or you're watching a replay, I just want to let you know that I appreciate your support. Some of y'all have been with me since the beginning, and I appreciate that you've taken time to show up and be consistent and encourage and support me in the thing that God has called me to do. And we're ready to just keep going, moving this thing along, going higher. I apologize in advance. My voice is going in and out, but we're just going to believe God. I'm not going to let that stop me from doing what I've been called to do. And so, those of you who have been with me, you know that we've been on this journey. We've been following the journey of the children of Israel from their exit from Egypt, and now we are getting ready to enter into that which what God has promised. And so, we're going to jump right in. But before we do, I do want to ask those of you who feel led. I have a unique opportunity in front of me. Let me get the flyer up. I have a unique opportunity in front of me. I have registered to participate in Forbes Entrepreneur of Impact. And so I am asking that if I've impacted your life in any way, if you've been encouraged, you've been edified, you've been empowered, that you would just take a moment to cast your vote. We out here, we doing what God said. We out here by faith now, crazy faith. And I believe I'm not leaving anything on the table. I don't know which one may prosper. And so it just takes a moment. You can scan the QR code with your phone or your device, and just, I would appreciate if y'all would vote for me, because I don't know what may prosper. So we're just going to go out and step out in faith and say we have not because we ask not. But this will give me the opportunity for mentorship. It would also help with marketing, and then actually some money, so I can go ahead and go forth in what I believe that God has called me to do. And so if you are so inclined, I will appreciate it. We're going to show up whether or not, and we know that the Lord's will be done. But I wanted to get that out first, so I do not forget to do that. So we are in the book of Joshua. We've been on this road for a couple of months, and now we're in the book of Joshua 6, and this is the week that I've been waiting on. This is the wall of Jericho, and I think God's timing is so perfect. And I just want to decree over you today that the wall will fall. Regardless of what's in front of you, you have a word that has been spoken over your life. So I want to encourage you not to be so concerned with what you see that you forget in whom you believe. That regardless of what's in front of you, there's nothing in the season that can stop, that can delay, that can deny you from walking into what God has called you to walk into. It is our responsibility to be obedient and to follow the instruction completely. I know that God began a good work in me. I know that He will complete it and perform it. And so the ghost supposed to say, I ain't scared of no ghosts, but hey, we ain't scared of no wall either. We're going to go ahead and do what God has called us to do. I think many of us are familiar with the story of the fall of Jericho. It's one of the most iconic victories in the Bible. It's a story of bold faith, radical obedience, and just witnessing the power of God to bring down walls that may seem like they're just impossible, to do things that normally in my natural I don't have the ability to do, but do it in a way where we know that it will be God, or it will be God. And not only us, but anyone watching, anyone who's able to witness this will say there is no way that humans would have been able to accomplish this thing. And so not only will it encourage our faith, but it will inspire others to believe that there is a God in Israel. He cares about me. And so I just want to encourage you that you have the power to overcome. No matter what you're facing, you have the power to overcome. And I say often that God wouldn't put a Goliath in front of me if there wasn't a spirit of David on the inside of me. And I think sometimes we get caught up or confused because God doesn't use um, conventional means to deliver us. We know, if you're familiar with the story, that Jericho was tightly shut up and its walls seemed impenetrable. And then God gives Joshua this battle plan that doesn't make any sense. It's to march around the city once a day for 6 days with the Ark of the Covenant, and then on the seventh day to march 7 times and shout. We know that God's strategies often defy human logic. And if I'm going to trust God, I have to trust his plan, even if it feels uncomfortable or unconventional. Because what I understand is sometimes God is calling us to be patient and persistent and to trust that he will lead the way to victory. But the thing that stuck out to me is God used something that I had to go through in my process in the wilderness to bring me into my promise. We know that, if you're familiar with the story, that the children of Israel walked around in the wilderness for 40 years. And I feel like I came out of that thing. I've crossed the Jordan River. I'm about to enter into my promise. And God is now telling me to walk around again. And if I'm not intentional, if I'm not careful, if I'm not aligned, and if my faith is not built up, I may feel like I've done all of this and I still have to go through the same thing. I'm still walking around in circles. I'm still doing these things, and I can get frustrated. And I believe that is why the command that Joshua was given was to be quiet, because sometimes when I'm following God's plan, it doesn't make sense. Sometimes I'm following God's plan and I don't understand. And so I have to remain silent. There was a transition I went through about 3 years ago now. And I remember having a conversation saying, hey, don't ask me a question because I don't understand either. I just know what God said. And so I'm not going to get caught up in conversations where I'm trying to justify my actions, because I know what God said. And if it doesn't have to make sense to make faith. And so I want to encourage you that, even though the strategy seems unconventional, to go ahead and do what God told you to do, because those who are watching, they're going to witness. They may be talking now, they may be talking about you, but then at one point, when this thing turns around, when this thing begins to shift, what you'll know is the same people who were talking about you are now looking for ways to talk to you. They were doubting you in the beginning, but now they see the divine call of God on your life. And now they're trying to act like, oh, I always knew it was going to go. I always knew this thing was going to work out. But none of these things move me. I know that God gave me a strategy. I'm going to do what God said, because if you've been with me, you know I've been declaring that it will be God, or it will be God. And so if I got to do something that I used to do in a past season, so be it. God, if you're going to use something that you used in the wilderness, so be it. I'm not going to give up. I'm going to hold fast to my confession of faith, because I know that it has a great recompense of reward. And so no matter what God has taught you, has instructed you to do, I want to encourage you to do that. Don't do almost that, and don't do more than that, but you just do what God called you to do. And so in this season, okay, I got a little bit off. Let me come back, bring this thing on back. Now, I got a little bit of voice left, so I got to save this thing. But that was the first instruction, that this is an unconventional strategy. See, the Israelites had to obey God's instruction without questioning it. And sometimes you say, God, I would go if I knew how this thing was going to work out. But I don't have to know how it's going to work out to know that it's going to work together for my good. Because Romans 8 tells us that all things work together. And so you may feel like you're running around in circles. It may seem that you're not making progress. It may seem that this thing is not going to turn. But one thing I know, that this is not the conclusion of the matter. Because at the end of the day, before it's all said and done, I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. At the end of the day, I will see that it will be God, or it will be God. At the end of the day, I will see that he who began a good work in me is going to complete it and perform it. And so I want to encourage you, just like the children of Israel, to obey God's instruction without question. For 6 days they had to march in silence. See, I had to close my mouth, and I had to be quiet, and I had to carry the ark because I had to keep my eye on Jesus. I had to keep my eye on the promise. I know that there's a wall beside me, but there's an ark in front of me, and I'm going to keep moving forward in the thing that God called me to do because I know that obedience is the key to victory. See, I had to be willing to follow God's instruction because it demonstrated my faith. I know that breakthrough often requires consistency in my obedience, even when the progress isn't immediately visible. Because on the outside, it may seem like I'm just walking around in circles. It may seem like I got to this place just to do the same thing that I was doing before. It may seem that my enemies are looking at me saying, I know that thing wasn't going to work. Look at them. They look a fool. Look at her walking around. That's the same thing that she did in the wilderness. If she was going to do that, she should have stayed in the wilderness. Why you go through all this to do the same thing? But what you don't understand is that in the wilderness, it was part of my process. But now that I've arrived here, it's a part of my promise. And I would just want to encourage you to be faithful in your obedience, to be consistent, because I did this for 6 days and I walked around and I was silent, and there was no indication that God was going to do what he said he was going to do. But I don't know about you, but God got a word. So I will not be moved by what I see. I would only be moved by what I believe, because I believe that who began a good work in me shall complete it and perform it. I believe that many are the plans of my heart, but it is the Lord's will that will prevail. I believe that sooner or later, this thing will turn in my favor. I believe that God is not a man that he should lie, nor the son of man that he should repent. If he said it, he'll do it. If he promised it, it'll come to pass. I believe that it won't be long now. This thing is turning. It's about to spring forth suddenly. I believe God. No matter what I see, I believe God. Walls in front of me, but I believe God. I don't see a way out, but I believe God. I don't know how this is going to work out, but I believe God. And after 6 days of walking around, looking at the ark and being silent, on the 7th day, that thing shifted. On the 7th day, that thing changed. And not only did I walk around one time, but I walked around 7 times. And on the 7th day, God commanded me to shout. And so here's the thing, because sometimes we get silent because it doesn't appear that we have anything to shout about. But I want to encourage you in this season to cry loud and spare not, to do what God said. I don't care if I don't see it. I don't care if it don't look like what God has said it was going to be. I'm still going to shout. I'm still going to open my mouth. I'm still going to decree what thus says the Lord. But I know that this thing is going to shift. I know what God said. I know what he promised me. And I'm not going to be silent when I need to shout. So I want to encourage you that if you're on the brink of a breakthrough, to shout. You may not feel like shouting. It may not look like this thing is gonna turn, but sometimes it's what's in my voice, it's what's in my mouth. It is the fruit of my lips. It is my ability to stand flat-footed and say, I don't care what it looks like. I know what God said. I don't care how I feel. I know what God said. I know in whom I believe. The Bible says that I can decree a thing and it shall be established. And so in this season, I'm going to shout because I know that there is power in my praise. And what we know in this story is just like I believe what's going to happen this year, that as we open our mouth and do what God said, that the wall fell down and they were able to take the city. See, here's the thing. You have to be careful that you don't rely on logic. You have to be careful that you don't rely on reason, because in this season it's not going to make sense, because in this time, if you look at this time in the Bible, there were 2 ways to defeat a strongly walled city. One was to attack it by digging under, by punching through, or to climbing over. The other was to circle the city and launch a siege and wait for the city to surrender, because they didn't have anything left and they were starving to death. But neither one of these was the strategy used at Jericho. I just had to do what God said. See, I'm so busy trying to punch through. I'm so busy trying to dig under. I'm so busy trying to climb a wall that I'm using all my strength and I'm using all my effort to do something that God didn't tell me to do. And so I get exhausted and I get frustrated and I'm ready to give up because I'm trying to do it in my strength. But I don't know about you, but the Bible tells me that the joy of the Lord is my strength. And so when I shout, that increases my strength. The Bible also tells me that his strength is made perfect in my weakness. This thing ain't moving. This thing ain't breaking. So I might as well go ahead and do what God said. Your strength will be made perfect in my weakness. I understand that there's no way that I can overcome this in the natural. I understand that there's no way I can get victory in my own strength. So rather than exhausting myself, rather than going out through all these changes, rather than I'm going from place to place, trying to figure out how to work this thing out, rather than having a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C, I'm just going to follow the plan of my master. He who begin a good work in me, I'm going to let him complete it and perform it because I know he knew me before he formed me in my mother's womb. And so I'm just going to shout. And when I shout, when I do what God said, even when it doesn't make sense, when I do what God said, despite how I feel, when I do what God said, despite what they said, when I do what God said, despite what I feel, then I understand that the wall will fall. I don't know about you, but I've been going through this season where things are falling and I ain't even got to do nothing. I'm out here just trying to focus on what God said, do what God said. And when I open my mouth to do what God said, I'm perfecting what I'm focused on what God told me to do. And he's working on the things that concern me. And so in this season, I just want to encourage you. Don't try to aren't you tired of trying to kick the wall? Aren't you trying? I'm trying to hit the wall. That thing ain't moving. Just go ahead and do what God said. It may not make sense, but it doesn't have to make sense to make faith. In this season, your wall will fall when you submit that thing into the hands of the master. When you stop trying to do it your way, the wall will fall. The wall will fall. And I don't know about you, but in order for me to be consistent, I got to see that thing already done. I don't know about you, but I got to believe that the promises of God are yes and amen. I got to bring myself into remembrance of the Red Sea that he parted, of the Jordan River that the water stopped. I got to bring myself into remembrance how he sustained me in the wilderness, how he kept me in my place of captivity. And I know that all of that, after all of that, he didn't bring me this far to only bring me this far. So no matter what happens, no matter what the devil speaks in my ear, I'm going to speak back and I'm going to let every demon in hell know that it will be God or it will be God. I'm not doing this in my own strength. I'm not trying to figure out what God has already worked out. I'm not trying to be worried about people that's trying to discourage me and tell me what they think. I only got one response for you. In this season, it will be God or it will be God. I don't know how this thing is going to work out, but it will be God or it will be God. How my children coming back? It will be God or it will be God. My mind is going to be in perfect peace because it will be God or it will be God. How's my body going to be healed? It will be God or it will be God. What's going to happen in 2025? It will be God or it will be God. Whew. And so I just want to encourage you that the wall will fall. The wall will fall. It don't matter what the wall is. In this season, when we keep our focus on God and do what he said, despite what we see, we know that it will be God or it will be God. God is the one who spoke the word over my life. He's the one that gave me destiny. He's the one that predestined me. He is the author and the finisher of my faith. And so I'm just going to let God be God and believe that when I do what he told me to do, that it will be God or it will be God. And people may think you crazy and you may not understand. I had something happen to me last week and I knew in my spirit, I couldn't explain it, but I knew that it was God. But I was talking to people and they were like, hey, I think you need to go back. Hey, I think you need to do this. But in my spirit, I knew that it will be God or it will be God. That may be a good thing, but just because it's a good thing, that doesn't make it a God thing. And you may settle for half a blessing, but after all I've been through, I didn't come this far to get half a miracle. I didn't come this far just to get healed. I didn't come this far just to have a little bit. No, I won't come in after everything that God said I can have. And it may seem crazy, but it's only crazy until it happens. And people want to ask, well, how did this happen? And how did that happen? It will be God or it will be God. I ain't got nothing else to offer you. I offer you Jesus, who is the author and the finisher of your faith. It will be God or it will be God. You may have a wall in front of you. This thing may seem crazy. We're in a season now where the atmosphere is agitated. And then the weather is doing things that the weather doesn't normally do. And it's easy to get caught up in, oh my goodness, but what is worry going to benefit me? Because if worry could change the outcome, it would have already been changed. But what I realized as I look back over my life, there have been seasons where I spent so much time worrying that I missed the miracle that God was trying to do. I should have been working, but I was worrying about what if this happens and what if that happens, because I forgot that God predestined me for greatness. He had purpose for me. And no matter what I encounter, that thing is going to work together for my good. And so if good hasn't come out of it, then I forgot to remember that it's still working. And I spend so much time worrying, so much time in anxiety, so much time going back and forth, vacillating, false starts over and over again. And none of that changed the outcome. And if I would have just stayed focused on the Ark of the Covenant, if I would have just done what Jesus told me to do, even though conditions did not seem favorable, then I would have been prepared for the moment of favor when it arrived. But because in some cases, it didn't look like the thing was going to turn. It didn't look like it was going to be any better. It looked like the current condition was going to be the conclusion. I gave up and I lost focus and I may have missed moments, but in the season, God is restoring. He's restoring everything that the cankerworm and the palmer worm and the locust ate. I want to remind you that the Bible says that they that sow in tears will reap in joy. And when the wall falls, you'll be able to take the city. Because the thing about the wall of Jericho, it was blocking me for something that was mine anyway. God had already promised me the promised land. And just because it was occupied by somebody else, and just because it was big, they were bigger than me, and just because they had been there long enough and they had got comfortable, just because I was on the outside and I didn't have access, it didn't change the word that God had spoken. And so the key to my deliverance, the key to the wall falling was my obedience. And I have to get to the place that sometimes I believe that sometimes I had to go through the wilderness and I had to be stripped of things and I had to lose things, because of when I got to this wall, if I still had a hammer, if I still had a chisel, if I still had any other tool to use in my natural, I would have used that, because that what makes sense to go ahead and destroy a wall. But I believe in this season that God has removed things, not to punish me, but to prepare me, because he knew that in this next season, I couldn't use the tools that I used in the wilderness. I couldn't use the strategies in captivity, because this is a promised land. And so I have to hold fast to the instruction that he gave me. That was good for that season. That relationship was good for that season. It was good for that experience. I'm not complaining, because it helped me to leave captivity and it sustained me in the wilderness. But now that I'm going to the promised land, I've made a decision that it will be God or it will be God. But I want to encourage you not to back down from the fight. But the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but they're mighty through God, through the pulling down of strongholds. And so my prayer is that the Lord will teach your hands to war, and your fingers to fight, not in the natural, but to use what God gave you and to follow his instruction consistently until you see the manifestation of the thing that he's promised you. And so that is your encouragement for this Tuesday. If you believe this word will be an encouragement for anyone else, we do strongly, we would so greatly appreciate if you would like this broadcast, if you would share it with others. And if this is, hey, this is where I am, this is what I needed. Come on, interact with me. Let me know that this is where this is helpful, that this is blessing you, that we are out here doing the work of the Lord. I know I'm doing the work of the Lord. I don't care if you respond or not, but it encourages me. I'm sorry that, I don't. I mean, I do, but I don't. I'm going to keep doing. I'm going to keep showing up as long as God tells me to show up. But I will appreciate it. I just want to make sure it's relevant. I just want to make sure that it's speaking to you right in the area of your need. And so again, please like, comment, and share. And if you're so inclined, please vote for me as the Entrepreneur of Impact. Until next week, I do want to encourage you now unto him who is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all you can ask, think, or imagine, according to the power that works in you. So let the power of God work in you and let God do what only he can do through you. I love y'all. Y'all go have a great rest of your Tuesday or whatever day you may be watching this. We'll see y'all next week. We'll be right here on T-Tac Tuesday in the same time and in the same place.
When the week begins to dim its glow, Tuesday's here to steal the show. We gather around with hearts so free, a Tea Talk Tuesday.